And we're back with George Benson here at the Breezin Lounge. And George, I'd like to ask you, you've played with so many different kinds of groups, so many different musicians through the years. What musical experiences do you feel have taught you the most?
Well, I mentioned earlier in one of the studies we had Jack McDuff. Because before that, I was a man of ears. I could pick out things very easily. And simple harmony was relatively easy for me. As I started traveling up and down the country and around the world, I began to rub shoulders with some of the greats, Herbie Hancock, John Coltrane, Wes Montgomery. And these were the elite men of our time. So I realized that I was lacking a lot. So I said, well, maybe I should go back to the drawing board. And I did. And I started studying them. And I started seeing that there was a lot to learn. The music was much bigger than I ever imagined. Then I decided I was going to be a musician. After hearing Charlie Parker play, I said, hey man, if I'm going to play music, I want to play like that. Or not, don't play music. So I started reaching out for the best that I could do.
I see. Now, the people that you've mentioned so far, were they forthcoming with information for you, or was most of your research just done from recordings?
Well, being in their presence was the biggest thing, because I began to see them up close and see what made them tick and why they were great. And that you can't get from a book.
That's right.
John Coltrane never took the horn out of his mouth. He talked through his horn. Hey, John, when we get off tonight, are you going to go down to the restaurant? And you were amazed at every note. And when you ask them a question, they can't. That kind of thing. So it was a great experience. And Montgomery was the quiet man, but he would open up after the gig was over. If you can get him by himself, he would open up and tell you the truth about what was going around the world. But he was not a guy who criticized people. Every now and then he would show me some things that were happening. He said, well, if you're going to go this route, you should be careful not to fall into this trap. And the man who was best at that was Miles Davis. He always spoke his mind. And he didn't care who liked it or not. It was embarrassing to be around him because he did it a lot.
Is that right?
But truth has its thing, and you can't stop truth. This discretion is important too.
Sure.
But he always spoke truth. And by being around, I was there at some really defining moments in my career. In the studio with him, I found out how he felt about jazz in general, and how he felt about me, how he valued me as a musician. Because I just thought I was, thinking, well, I'm old, R&B, blues, wish I was a jazz guitar player kind of musician in the late 60s. And he valued me much higher than that. I was one of the first guitar players to ever play on his recordings. So I said, ooh, I never realized how important that is. That's going to be in history.
Yeah.
So we became friends. I couldn't hang around with him because he was so volatile, But a likable fellow, nonetheless, and very valuable as a musician because he had the experience of playing with the greatest, I consider the greatest jazz musician of our time, Charlie Parker. And so that with him having that kind of experience made him a most valuable fellow in my mind. So the few times I hung around him were lesson time.
Did you ever feel nervous playing with guys like that the first time? Guys like Miles or Wes? Or
apprehensive because I didn't know what it was they wanted me to play. And I never forget in the studio one time, Tony Williams, who was just a kid, and he was still in his teens, and I had sat in with him. His dad used to bring him around to the clubs when we played Boston, and his dad used to shout, how many of you want to hear Tony Williams playing? And nobody would say anything. And so I said, who's Tony Williams? And then Jack would remind me, that kid that plays with the big sticks? I mean, you mean that loud kid that plays with the big sticks? But we ended up playing with him, and then later him and I became like very good friends. But that loud kid that played with the big sticks became an innovator of enormous proportions.
Absolutely. Yes.
He was another teacher, a world teacher about drums and percussion.
Now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but, you know,
Been doing it all night. Why not?
everybody's paid some dues. You know, we've all had moments on stage where you go, oh, I hope I never see any of these people again. Okay. When you had uncomfortable moments on stage, which we all do, you know, did you learn more from those experiences?
Not really, because I don't think the stage is a place where you should be uncomfortable. I've spent most of my life, the only thing I've done more than being on stage is sleeping. That's the only thing. So this is one of the things I do, and it took me years to master it, but I'm comfortable on stage. I got butterflies for about 2 seconds when we got ready to play to 350,000 people in Brazil at the Rock in Rio festival. 2 days later, we had another 220,000 people. And that day, I wasn't nervous at all. The first day, when I looked out and saw 350,000 people, the butterfly came in. Then I said to myself, wait a minute, this is what I do. Let me go out and wow them, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, this is what
That's
I
the
do. So
entertainer.
I'm happy about being on stage. I'm very comfortable.
Sure. Now, in the early days of, you know, maybe playing with your first organ trios, and you considered yourself mostly an R&B guy.
Yeah.
Okay. How uncomfortable were you?
I knew it was going to be a learning experience, and every now and then I would run into somebody who was a teacher. Gene Harris was at a rehearsal I was doing at a club. I was going to go on that night, and he was playing at another jazz club up the street. Well, this house was actually more an R&B than a jazz house. And he was there for my rehearsal. He was down having a beer, and I was playing the changes to and he was drinking his beer, and every time I played the wrong change, he said, up. He was sitting at the bar, and I'm on stage. He said, up. And that's a B flat with a flat. And I kept playing, oh, thank you, sir. I didn't know who he was. I didn't recognize him.
Oh, you didn't know?
I didn't recognize him. Then he kept saying, no, that change, that's a such and such change, a minor 7 with a raised 9 or something crazy. And I said, man, when I came off, I said, thank you very much. I said, man, how you know all this stuff? He said, well, my name is Gene Harris. I said, with the 3 signs?
Yeah.
And we became very good friends, but he taught me to examine things, search them out, make sure. See, a lot of us play from a fake book, which we learned to call them the truth later. We started calling them fake books, because that's what they were.
Sure.
Later, they started coming out with real books, but these fake books were truly what they said, fake books.
Yeah.
So if you learn the fake changes and you start playing with real musicians, they will correct you.
Right.
And they play the real changes. Once you know the real change, you can embellish. You can go outside of the norm, but you know what effect of what you're playing is having on the chord changes. You know, if I play a minor chord and a 2/5, let's say for instance C minor to an F7, and then we're going to B flat, right? I can play that. That's common. But if you play the same thing, and then
Right.
you got no flat 5.
Right.
So once you know the real changes, then you can embellish, you can do anything you want. I just found out recently that that's a very classical approach to music. It's got the flat 5 built in. Da, 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 da. Classical composers use that scenario a lot.
That's a
You're
great
playing the
sound.
song. Oh, I've been there playing it. Well,
We'll use our imaginations.
yes.
Well, George, thanks for being so candid about this. It's nice to know that everybody goes through those kinds of experiences. And when we see a guy like you, it makes us all feel a lot better.
You know what's wonderful, man? Being on stage with you, my friend, because I know you understand what I'm talking about. But, you know, it's the first time we've had a chance to really get together and hang out.
Yes.
Although you've been a big supporter of what I do, and when I hear you speak, you always speak of me very highly. But I have learned to value you. Since we've been playing together, I'm looking forward to some more playing with you, man. We got to do something together.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that's on video. We'll see you in future lessons.